Welcome back to the Motivating Force podcast. I am host Sway, and joining me as always is Justin. As you can tell by the title, Understanding Your Self-Worth. This is, self-worth, self-esteem, whatever you want to call it. This is the way that you view yourself, right? Not about how others view you, not about the judgment that they have, the things that they say behind your back. I want to make it clear that this episode is about how you view yourself, right? We need each person listening to think about their own self-worth and how you can change it for the better. Of course, we're talking about self-esteem. There's obviously other factors that come into play when putting you into that negative headspace, putting your self-worth down. If you're somebody that happens to have low self-esteem, it's a very common thing, whether you want to admit it or not. Admitting to yourself that you have low self-esteem or low self-worth, it could be hundreds of different factors. If it's from high school, if it stems from high school hormones, those puberty, if it stems from peer pressure, judgment, fear, or like just wanting to feel included. So inclusion comes into effect. There's too many factors that can affect you negatively. But I want to bring it up because I want to bring up the topic because I want to talk about how to change it for the better. We're not going to sit here talking about all the things that negatively affect you. I want to talk about the things that you can do to better your self-worth, to make yourself feel like you're actually worth something.
Well, see, I think that's actually the beautiful thing about self-worth is that it's never the same. Every day it's different, and it could be higher and it can be lower every day. And I know what we're about ready to get into are ways to help keep bumping that number up and moving it on an upward trend. You can kind of almost view your self-worth as like a stock. Or for some people, like a crypto, because it might be more volatile in how its highs and lows go. But man, I'm excited for this.
No, it's a great point too, because it does change every single day. And think about whenever you feel like crap one day. It's any little thing could happen that just, ruins your day. It makes you feel like, oh, damn, like I'm an idiot, or like I'm not worth this because I said the wrong thing to the wrong person. You meet a celebrity for the first time and then you're like, and then you're just like, oh, now I'm always going to be that guy to that person. Like you make a fool of yourself.
Right.
I'm kind of scared of doing that tomorrow.
I was going to say, is this what you're worried about?
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, we're going to see a comedian live, and we're very excited. So I don't want to be the guy that freezes up. Anyway, talking about your self-esteem and the things that you can do to better it, you got to understand that only you can change that. Only you make that deciding factor of if you get to accept that that's what you're worth, or if that's what you want to believe you are to other people. I can be talked up all the time by my significant other, and she tells me all the time, oh, you're the best, or you're so handsome, or whatever, but it's up to me to decide if I want to accept it. Because you can be told it all day long and not believe it, but it's up to you to believe that thing that's being told about you. So then why not just start finding a way to tell yourself in a different way that you are worth something, that you are attractive, that you are funny, that you are whatever the case that you're lacking to build up your self-esteem.
Yeah, you see, because that works two ways, right? Because you have people who are going to be trying to build you up all the time, and you have people who are going to be trying to tear you down all the time. And exactly how much of that do you accept, and what do you accept? And that's kind of the funny part two to why this is the funny thing about it, right? Yeah. Because it is a constantly fluctuating number for your self-worth. And at the same time, that number is determined 100% by you and what you think about yourself.
Yeah, and also there is a point that we're going to be talking towards the end of the episode about the imposter syndrome, and that like why it's easier for you to accept all the negatives that people put on you than to accept the successes or the accomplishments or the positives that they're throwing your way. It's easier for you to do than like accept the negatives because you can justify it, especially when you have a low self-esteem. But since we're talking about people putting you down and talking all sorts of garbage about you, why does that matter to you, right? If you feel like all you want to do and the view that you have for yourself is that you just want to be loved, right? If you're an incel, if you're having just a hard time with relationships, finding romance in your life, and you're just seeking a healthy relationship, you want to be loved and you can't find it. Here comes the corniness, and when people say you just gotta love yourself, brother.
No, I mean, you do have to love yourself to an extent, but yes, no, that is not the answer to a healthy relationship or to be seeking something like that. We are humans, we are sociable creatures. It is not wrong of you to seek validation from others.
Yeah.
So don't listen to that BS about, well, just focus on yourself first, love yourself first. Like, yes, you should, but that doesn't mean that you're physically capable of ignoring all the other things that are coming your way.
You're right. And this is where the tie-in with the law of attraction comes into play, right? Because, of course, the motivating force, we're always going to be talking about the law of attraction. If you want to start seeing your life turn around for the better, right? You want to be successful out of nowhere now, and you want to achieve achieve greatness, period, then start believing in yourself. Start believing that these accomplishments are made for you, that they're meant to be achieved by you. And then you start putting the effort behind it because now you believe that you can actually accomplish it, and you will. You will see that positive change happen, especially if you're somebody who doesn't have a high self-worth. You start building yourself up. You're going to build that confidence within yourself to actually go out and get after it.
It is kind of easy to forget about working on yourself in that sense, right? Because with like school or with work, you kind of wake up, you have to go. It's a thing you have to do. You don't necessarily have to get up and get after it. Whereas working on your self-esteem, your self-worth, really anything with yourself, it's 100% up to you. And sometimes we'll give ourselves time frames that are way too relaxed, or won't give ourselves a time frame at all because we're not paying attention to it. And you can technically make it through life like that, albeit not a very successful one or a very happy one, but it is doable. So being able to recognize these things and get after it is definitely a strong point.
Yeah, and it reminds me too, because this is where like our podcast episodes come from our own truth, right? This is where we kind of give you that sneak peek on our lives and why we choose to talk about the things we choose to talk about. And there's just a line from a song that I was told back in 2015. Well, it was a while ago for me. But I always remember it, right? It's from a band called Stick to Your Guns, and the song is called Diamond. But the line goes as follows: I know that what's in front of me is a reflection of what is inside of me. Right? Now that sounds kind of generic, but the point of it is that you can't live expecting great things to fall in your path. Right? You can't, because it's not going to happen unless you're the luckiest person in the world. Great things aren't just going to fall in your path, and you're not just going to stumble upon it and achieve those great things. If you keep crapping all over your self-esteem, same, it's not going to fall in your path because you're just making it a terrible situation that you keep finding yourself in. So if you start believing that you deserve greatness, if you deserve to accomplish things, if you deserve success, you start putting that within yourself. The path that you find in front of you is only a reflection of that, right? Now, back when I was in high school around this time, the reason why I know this line is because I was somebody who had a low self-esteem because, as we've talked about before, I was somebody who had the 1,000 of masks that I would have to choose from. I would have to pick and choose my environment, who I'm around, try to pick out which Josue I was going to be so then I can fit in, so I can be included. Right? So I never realized which mask was me for me to then give that time and love to. So the self-worth wasn't there. And then I was struggling one day, and I was in a band straight out of high school, and one of my bandmates noticed it, and he gave me that line, and it was one of those things that like it clicked. The light bulb went off. And I'm kind of giving this to you guys because hopefully somebody can use that same line from a song, the quote. They can look up the song, they can hear it, maybe it resonates with them, but then it starts to help them change for the better, start changing the way that they view themselves, start saying, hey, I want this path in front of me to change, so I should probably change the reflection inside of me for the better.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because if you kind of see everything around you as worthless, there's no way you're going to kind of look at yourself like you're $1 million, right? It just doesn't work like that. Right. So like you're going to be like, everything around you is going to be a cause and effect based off of you, because we all have this little bit of like protagonist syndrome to some degree, right? Yeah, because you have your ego. And you're going to try to find things to be as similar to you as possible. So it's definitely a point where if you think everything around you is just crappy and life's going nowhere, none of this stuff means anything, and you're trying to figure out how to change that, you need to look inwards, because deep down you might actually be feeling that way about yourself. And that goes for any way that you look at the world that you don't like. Yeah. It's a reflection off of things about yourself that you don't like.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think this would be a good transition into the imposter syndrome that I'm going to be talking about here in a few. But what you just talked about made me kind of think of the way that I act when it comes to buying things for myself. I feel like I'm not worth a $6 shirt at times. So I don't get myself that, because then I'll say, oh, it's too expensive, right? But I'll buy my girlfriend a $30 shirt.
Oh, yeah.
You see it like, that's good. Like
well, in a way.
The example is good, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. That I won't spend these luxuries, or I can afford all this stuff, but I don't feel like I'm worth it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm good sitting in a broken chair because I know how to not break it. I know where to position my weight. But then to spend $60 to $80 on a new computer chair, it's like, I'm fine with how mine is now.
I think something to keep in mind, though, is you could also be confusing if you're worth it compared to if you deserve it. Mm-hmm. Right? So with like the new shirt, you could be like, the $6 shirt, well, you know, and it's not that you're not worth the $6 shirt. It's that sometimes you might not feel like you deserve the $6 shirt, because you could be like, well, back of your head, like, my shirt quota is full. I have a shirt for every day of the week. And as a guy, it's not a big deal to you. So then, yeah, $6 is too much, because a penny is too much. It's not part of your budget right now. So that's something to consider too, because I did have issues with that before, where I would kind of be like, I didn't feel like I deserved a lot of things, or that I was worth a lot of things. Yeah. And I kind of had to work on that perspective. And I think that's something I had to pay attention to was, well, maybe it's not that I'm not worth it or I don't deserve it. It's just not in my budget right now. Like, it's not my focal point. So why spend money frivolously like that? Okay. Right? So that's something to keep in mind.
Well, then, good. Then it was a great transition, because the deserving aspect is the main point of this section, right?
I'm glad I can help you out.
For the people that aren't in high school, the people that are like adults now, right, quote unquote, you may be suffering from something similar, and it's called an imposter syndrome, right? It could be defined as a collection of feelings of inadequacy that persist despite evident success. Imposters suffer from chronic self-doubt and a sense of intellectual fraudulence that override any feelings of success or external proof of their competence. That's a lot of words. Let's dumb it down for us.
Please do.
Yeah. So like we were talking about before, you are older, you are feeling like you aren't deserving of a new shirt, or saying, okay, you've mentioned before in another podcast where we talked about your college degree, right? People weren't giving you the credit for achieving an associate's degree, even though you did it just because it was in a longer time span.
Yeah.
Right. So then you didn't feel like, oh, I did this good thing, even though you achieved something great. You achieved a college degree, period. Doesn't matter with the time frame. You did this thing, but you won't accept it because of all these other factors.
Right.
These outside forces that are judging you, these people saying, oh, but you could have done it in a shorter amount of time. You don't want to accept that you actually achieved a goal that you set for yourself. So you don't feel like you deserve it. So, I mean, that's just like a little example, because there's people like Bert Kreischer, another comedian, that was just talking about how he couldn't spend money for himself on a vacation, or say that he worked hard for something because of imposter syndrome. It wasn't, he didn't want to accept the fact that he got lucky or that he worked hard at something, because he felt like he wasn't working hard enough. The self-worth wasn't there. So when you start, well, obviously the imposter syndrome is from years and years of always telling yourself that you're not worth it, beating yourself down, saying that you're not good enough. So then this is kind of what it turns into later on in life. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, that was my daily mantra for probably about 13 years. So
that you're not good?
I get it. Oh, yeah.
You're not good enough?
Yeah.
Jesus, this got dark.
No. I mean, I just call that your standard teenage angst, but, I guess not everybody goes through that.
No, I get what you're saying, but the imposter syndrome is basically just a result of a lack of realization of your own successes, right? So you can achieve all these great things. You can run 3 different businesses, but if you fail to realize that you are running these businesses, and if you have people working for you, that is a giant thing, like, period. That's an accomplishment that not a lot of people have. So if you're going to sit there and still think that you're not worth anything, and that all these other people like Elon Musk, if you're going to compare yourself to them, of course you're going to look like nothing, right? Because their size of business is completely different than yours. But when you realize your successes, your personal successes, then the imposter syndrome can kind of disappear. Then your self-worth will go up.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest downfall with people who kind of pick certain celebrities or certain like mega successful people to like look up to, because some of it can be like way too far reaching, like you're saying with the Elon Musk thing. I don't care what you're doing right now, you are not going to compare to Elon Musk, and that's going to have a really big psychological effect on a lot of people, because you're going to make it really far by mimicking your heroes or the people you look up to and striving for this great success, and you're going to reach a good level of success, but it was just so much further reaching that because you never reached that point, you're always going to feel like a failure. And the key difference is when you see these people that you want to be like, then you should work towards being like them, not having everything that they have or reaching the level of success that they did. Because, I mean, realistically, all these achievements, all these goals, money, wealth, family, friends, it's all subjective. Everybody's going to have opinions on it based off of how many friends you should have, how much you should work versus how much you should relax, how much money you should make a year at different ages. And if you hold any of that as set in stone, you can really run your mind rampant with that. And more so with the imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Because
you do hold yourself to certain standards that other people make for you, and it's for no reason at all.
Yeah. The difference between the imposter syndrome and just having a low self-esteem, like we talked about at the beginning of this, is that now you've actually achieved something, right? Now you're getting older, you're an adult, you actually have accomplishments under your belt. You have these different things that you've done, if you're just, even if it's just that you're a father or you're a mother, you're a parent, you have become this next step in life, so you just fail to acknowledge that you deserve the respect that comes with it, and you're not giving yourself the respect needed. So when the moment comes that you start to respect yourself, you'll start to love yourself, you'll start to grow in self-worth, and that self-esteem will start getting higher, and like I said, that just circles into giving you more confidence to keep achieving greater and greater things.
Yeah, and I don't know why, but I am going to run it back here to the stock picture, all right? Because all this kind of ties together in my brain in this way when it comes to that self-worth. Like these last couple of points we're hitting at, especially with imposter syndrome and all that, you're hitting more of that like speculative side of things and why you need to be firm in who you are, right? And it makes me think of how many times I see on like my news feeds for my stocks of like, oh, this company is like didn't meet this goal, they didn't meet this criteria, they failed on shipping this thing out, this batch of products was contaminated, and you're like, oh crap, that stock's gonna go drop. And then I'm gonna go look at it real quick to see like, should I sell it, should I short, like what should I do, right? And I go look at it, and the stock went up that day.
Yeah.
And it's like, how does that even make sense? You know, because all that stuff right there is all speculation. And that face value that other people might see for yourself doesn't really mean anything, because it's what you know your company's worth.
Yeah.
And that company being you. How much revenue are you producing? And not money. You guys get the analogy here. I'm not talking about money. But how much are you producing for yourself at the end of the day? And what's that worth to you? Because a lot of people are going to look at it and see it's worth $1, and then other people are going to look at it and say that it's worth $1 million.
Well, no, I do really like how it came full circle, and I do like how you use the analogy of money, because like I said at the beginning of the title, as you can tell, guys, understanding your self-worth. Did it for a reason, because a lot of people like to think in money, as you just saw Justin break it down. But also feel free to like, comment, give us your thoughts on this episode. Give us, some tips for people that might be struggling with self-worth and a low self-esteem. Give us some tips on how you changed it, things that helped you realize that you needed to start respecting yourself. You can also subscribe and hit the bell icon, so then next time we release videos, you get notified immediately. So then you're one of the first people to watch the video or listen to it if you're on our other platforms, and you can comment down below.